January 31st, 1933. The streets of Berlin. A biting wind whips along the Wilhelmstrasse, carrying the scent of coal smoke and desperation. For Franz Meyer, a former corporal who once saw the inside of a British prisoner of war camp, the wind is the least of his worries. His stomach is a hollow ache. He huddles in a line of hundreds of other men, their shoulders slumped, their faces gray with the pallor of long-term hunger. They are ghosts in worn-out felt-grau tunics and threadbare civilian coats, shuffling toward a steaming cauldron of turnip soup. This is the new Germany, a nation of queues. Queues for bread, for work, for a bowl of watery broth that barely keeps a man on his feet. The Great War had cost Franz his youth. The Treaty of Versailles had cost his country its pride. And the Great Depression had cost him his job at the Borsig Locomotive Works. Now, a day's survival is measured in spoonfuls. He can hear the chanting from a few blocks away, near the Brandenburg Gate. The rhythmic roar of Sieg Heil. It's a sound of promise to some, a sound of menace to others. Yesterday, Adolf Hitler was made chancellor. The newspapers promised a national awakening, an end to this humiliation. Franz just wants a job. He wants the clatter and roar of the factory to replace the grumbling in his belly. He wants to believe the posters screaming of work and bread. But all he sees is the man in front of him, whose shaking hands can barely hold his empty bowl. A few miles away, in a cavernous, marble-lined office, another man contemplates the very same problem, but on a scale of impossible magnitude. Hjalmar Schacht, a man with a stiff high collar and a gaze as sharp and cold as shattered glass, walks through the headquarters of the Reichsbank. The silence here is different from the hopeless silence of the soup line. It is the deep, profound silence of an empty vault. Schacht is a financial wizard, a titan of banking who had slain the dragon of hyperinflation a decade earlier. But this is something else entirely. This is not a sick patient. It is a corpse. He runs a hand over the ledger on his desk. The numbers don't just speak, they scream. 6 million unemployed, a number that doesn't even count the partially employed or those who have given up looking. National gold reserves are a pittance, less than 400 million Reichsmarks, barely enough to cover a few weeks of essential imports. The foreign debt, a legacy of the war and the ruinous reparations, is a mountain of granite weighing down the entire economy. Germany is insolvent, bankrupt. The treasury isn't just low, it is a void. And yet, the demands of the new chancellor are anything but void. Hitler doesn't speak of balancing budgets or servicing debt. He speaks of autobahns that will crisscross the nation. He speaks of a revitalized industry. But behind closed doors, in hushed, urgent tones, he speaks of other things. He speaks of panzers rolling across plains, of Messerschmitt fighters clawing at the sky, of U-boats slipping beneath the waves. He wants a new army, a new navy, a new air force. He wants the Wehrmacht to become the most powerful military machine on Earth, and he wants it now. Schacht looks out the window at the gray Berlin sky. How do you build an air force when you can't afford aluminum? How do you forge thousands of tanks when your steel factories are cold and silent? How do you pay millions of soldiers when you can't even feed the men in the soup kitchens? Any conventional economic solution, raising taxes, printing money, seeking foreign loans, is a non-starter. Raising taxes on a broke populace is like trying to draw blood from a stone. Printing money would unleash the horrifying ghost of 1923, when a wheelbarrow of cash couldn't buy a loaf of bread. And no foreign nation would lend a single dollar to the unstable, saber-rattling new German regime. It is a perfect trap, an impossible equation. The will of the Führer against the cold, hard reality of zero. Any other man would have told Hitler it was a fantasy. But Hjalmar Schacht is not any other man. He is a master of financial illusion, a patriot and an egotist who believes he alone can solve the unsolvable. As he stands there, the faint sounds of the city's despair filtering through the thick glass, an idea begins to form. It is an idea born of sheer desperation and breathtaking audacity. It is not a plan for recovery. It is a conspiracy. A way to build a war machine with money that doesn't exist.
The air in the Reich Chancellery is thick with cigar smoke and ambition. It is the spring of 1934. Hitler sits behind a vast oak desk, his hands clasped, his eyes fixed on the man standing before him. He is impatient, a man of grand visions who despises the tedious details of accounting. He has given his order, rearm Germany, and do it in secret. Now his Reichsbank president, Hjalmar Schacht, has returned with a plan. Schacht begins to speak not of budgets and deficits, but of something far more ephemeral. He talks about confidence. He talks about a loophole. He explains that under the Treaty of Versailles, the German government is explicitly forbidden from directly funding military rearmament. The world's financial watchdogs, the banks in London, Paris, and New York, are scrutinizing every Reichsmark the government spends. Any direct payment to Krupp for artillery shells or to Junkers for bomber prototypes would trigger international alarms and likely sanctions. So, Schacht proposes they will not use the German government's money. They will use someone else's. Except that someone else doesn't exist. He outlines his creation, a shell company, a ghost. It will be called the Metallurgische Forschungsgesellschaft, or MEFO for short. A deliberately boring name suggesting some mundane metallurgical research firm. It would have a tiny, almost comical amount of capital, just 1 million Reichsmarks, put up by a consortium of Germany's biggest industrial giants, Siemens, Deutsche Industriewerke, Krupp, and Rheinmetall. These companies are the very ones who will build the new Wehrmacht. They are, in effect, investing in their own customer. Here is the trick, the dark magic at the heart of the scheme. When the German military places an order for 100 Panzer I tanks, for a squadron of Heinkel H-51 biplanes, the manufacturer will not send the bill to the German government. They will send it to MEFO. In return, MEFO will not pay them in cash. It will pay them with a special type of promissory note, a bill of exchange, the MEFO Bill. This piece of paper is, for all intents and purposes, an IOU. It is a promise to pay the full amount plus interest in 5 years. Hitler listens, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. He sees the deception. But what good is a piece of paper from a company with no assets? Who would accept that as payment? Schacht reveals the masterstroke. Each MEFO bill will be guaranteed by the German Reichsbank itself. This guarantee turns a worthless IOU from a phantom company into a rock-solid government-backed security. For the arms manufacturer, it's as good as cash. They can take it to any German bank and exchange it for real Reichsmarks, or they can hold on to it and collect a generous 4% interest. It is brilliant. It is diabolical. It allows the Nazi regime to spend billions on rearmament completely off the books. There is no official government spending, so the international community sees nothing. There is no new money being printed, so there is no immediate inflation to panic the German public. It is a shadow currency, a stream of ghost money flowing from a phantom company to build a very real army. By 1935, the ghost money is flooding the German economy. At the Rheinmetall Borsig works in Dusseldorf, furnaces that had been cold for a decade roar back to life. The clang of hammer on steel echoes through the cavernous assembly halls. Thousands of men like Franz Meyer, who just 2 years ago were starving in soup lines, now have jobs. They wear clean overalls, they carry lunch pails, they earn a steady wage. They are forging the barrels of the new 88mm anti-aircraft guns and the chassis for the first Panzers. For them, it is not a trick. It is an economic miracle. They see Hitler as their savior, the man who brought back work and bread just as he promised. You could feel the change everywhere. The listless despair of the early 30s was being replaced by a pulsating nationalistic energy. But men like Schacht understood the truth. The entire recovery was a fiction. The new prosperity was built not on genuine economic value, but on a rapidly growing mountain of secret debt. Every MEFO bill issued was another brick in a vast invisible pyramid scheme. And Schacht knew with the cold certainty of a mathematician that all such schemes have one thing in common. Eventually, they must collapse. The 5-year notes would start coming due in 1939, and when they did, the government would have to pay. But with what?
The night of March 11th, 1938. The Austrian border. The rumble begins as a low vibration in the ground, then grows into a deafening roar. Under a cold, starry sky, the iron tracks of hundreds of Panzer I and Panzer II tanks clatter across the border into Austria. It is the Anschluss, the reunification of Germany and Austria. To the world, it is a bold geopolitical move, a nation of German-speaking people welcoming their brothers. Cheering crowds line the streets of Vienna, throwing flowers at the German soldiers. But for a select group of men in the black uniforms of the SS, this is not a political mission. It is a bank raid on a national scale. While Hitler's motorcade proceeds triumphantly through the city, SS Standartenführer Otto Wagner leads a detachment of men to the Österreichische Nationalbank, the Austrian National Bank. There is no resistance. The doors are opened. Inside, the SS officers, accompanied by officials from the German Reichsbank, descend into the vaults. Under the harsh glare of electric lights, they see it. Stack upon stack of gold bars, gleaming with a dull, heavy luster. Over 90 tons of solid gold, worth nearly 200 million Reichsmarks. Within days, it is all loaded onto armored trucks and transported under heavy guard to the vaults of the Reichsbank in Berlin. This is the first major injection of real assets into the MEFO Bill fantasy. Schacht's ghost money scheme is beginning to fray at the edges. The secret debt has ballooned to over 12 billion Reichsmarks. Confidence is wavering. The stolen Austrian gold provides a temporary backstop, a tangible foundation for the mountain of paper promises. But it is not a solution. It is a fix, like a drug addict needing a larger and larger dose to stave off the inevitable crash. The German war machine has a ravenous, insatiable appetite, and the Austrian gold is merely an appetizer. The hunt for assets now turns inward against a target that cannot fight back. All across Germany, the persecution of the Jewish population intensifies, but now with a brutally systematic economic objective. It starts with decrees. The decree for the reporting of Jewish-owned property forces every Jewish person to register all assets over 5,000 Reichsmarks. It is a financial mapping exercise for a nationwide heist. Then comes the Aryanization. Jewish business owners are forced to sell their shops, their factories, their life's work to Aryan Germans for a fraction of their true value. Imagine you are a Jewish jeweler in Berlin. Your family has run this shop on the Kurfürstendamm for 3 generations. One day, 2 men in Nazi party uniforms enter. They do not browse. They inform you that your business is being Aryanized. You will sell it to a party-approved buyer for a price they dictate. If you refuse, you will be arrested, your shop seized anyway, and you will get nothing. You will likely be sent to a place like Dachau. So you sign the papers. The money from the forced sale goes into a blocked account, which you cannot access. Then comes the Reichsflight tax, a massive levy designed to strip anyone trying to emigrate of their remaining wealth. It is theft by 1,000 bureaucratic cuts. The culmination of this economic war is Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass in November 1938. As synagogues burn and shop windows are shattered, a new perverse penalty is announced. A collective fine of 1 billion Reichsmarks is imposed on the German Jewish community as atonement for the damage done to their own property.
This money, expropriated with chilling legal precision, flows directly into the state's coffers, run by Finance Minister Lutz Graf Schwerin von Kroskik. It is used to back the ever-growing pile of MEFO bills. The tanks that will roll into Poland are being built with stolen gold from Vienna. The bombers being assembled at the Junkers factory are financed by the life savings of a cloth merchant from Hamburg. The German economic miracle is revealed for what it truly is: a parasitic system, feeding first on its own vulnerable citizens and then on its neighbors. Yet even this vast and brutal plunder is not enough. The MEFO debt continues to grow, a cancer at the heart of the Reich's economy. Shocked, the architect of the scheme is now horrified. He sees the abyss that is opening up. The beast he created is now unstoppable, and it is demanding more.
The Berghof, Berchtesgaden. Early January 1939. Snow lies thick on the pines surrounding Hitler's mountain retreat. Inside, the air is stale with tension. Hjalmar Schacht stands before the Führer, his face a mask of grim resolve. For months, he has been sending memoranda, letters, warnings. All have been ignored. Now, he is making his final, desperate plea in person. For 5 years, he has performed his financial magic trick, pulling billions of Reichsmarks out of thin air to fund the Wehrmacht. But the show is over. The bill is coming due. He lays it out in stark, unvarnished terms. The MEFO bills, those 5-year notes that built the Panzers and the Stukas, are about to mature. The arms manufacturers, the banks, the investors who hold them will soon be knocking on the Reichsbank's door, demanding payment in real money. But there is no real money. The stolen Austrian gold is a drop in the ocean. The looted Jewish assets are already spent. Germany's official budget is a fiction. The secret debt is now so colossal that if it were revealed, the Reichsmark would collapse overnight, triggering an economic apocalypse that would make the hyperinflation of 1923 look like a minor inconvenience. Mein Führer, Schacht argues, his voice tight, we must stop. We must drastically cut military spending. We must shift production back to consumer goods, to exports. We must reintegrate ourselves into the world economy to earn the foreign currency we need to pay these debts. He is talking to a man who does not live in the world of balance sheets and economic reality. Hitler stares back at him, his eyes cold. He is not listening. He is hearing heresy. To him, Schacht's words are a betrayal. Cutting military spending? That is an admission of weakness. Making consumer goods? That is a distraction from the great national struggle for Lebensraum, for living space. Hitler's economy is not designed for the comfort of his people. It is a tool forged for a single purpose: war. The trap, Schacht realizes, is now fully sprung. It's no longer just a financial problem. The entire German society has been re-engineered around the engine of rearmament. What happens if you stop? The thousands of men working at the Krupp steelworks, the Messerschmitt aircraft plants, the Blohm and Voss shipyards, their jobs vanish. The economic miracle evaporates, and the 6 million unemployed from 1933 reappear. Only this time, they are not just hungry, they are angry and disillusioned. The Nazi Party's entire claim to legitimacy, that it had saved Germany from economic ruin, would be exposed as the biggest lie of all. Hitler has built a machine that must constantly accelerate. To slow down is to crash. He has gambled everything on a single strategy: conquest. He cannot earn the money to pay the debts, so he must steal it. He cannot create wealth, so he must seize it. Austria was a test. The Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia, annexed in late 1938, was another small plunder. But it wasn't enough. He needed the industrial heartland of Czechoslovakia, its factories, its resources, and most importantly, the gold reserves in its national bank in Prague. On March 15, 1939, German troops march into what remains of Czechoslovakia, violating the Munich Agreement and shocking the world. Once again, SS units make straight for the National Bank. They seize another $45 million worth of gold. But it's still not enough. The MEFO bomb is still ticking. Schacht's pleas are dismissed. On January 20th, 1939, Hitler fires him as president of the Reichsbank. He is replaced by Walther Funk, a more pliable Nazi loyalist who will not question the Führer's will. The logic is now inescapable and terrifying. The German economy cannot survive without war. It is not that Hitler wants a war and needs an economy to support it. It is that he has built an economy that requires war to survive. The only way to prevent the Ponzi scheme from collapsing inward is for it to explode outward. The only way to pay the bills for the last war is to start a new one. As the summer of 1939 fades, the world holds its breath, watching the Polish border. They see a political crisis, a dispute over territory. They do not see the truth, that the invasion to come is not just an act of aggression, but the ultimate act of desperate, fraudulent accounting. September 1st, 1939. The Polish border. The pre-dawn air is damp and cold. In the gloom, the gunners of the old battleship Schleswig-Holstein make their final checks. At 04:45, the ship's massive cannons erupt with a deafening concussion, spitting fire and smoke as they hurl shells at the Polish garrison on the Westerplatte. At the same moment, all along the frontier, the earth trembles. Over 1.5 million German soldiers, supported by more than 2,000 tanks and 1,000 aircraft, surge into Poland. World War II has begun. For the young panzer crews of General Heinz Guderian's 19th Army Corps, this is the moment they have trained for. Their Panzer IIs and IIIs, forged in factories paid for with ghost money, easily slice through the Polish defenses. Above them, the Stuka dive bombers, whose development was financed by those same secret MEFO bills, scream down from the sky, their sirens, the Jericho trumpets, sowing terror on the ground below. This is the Blitzkrieg, the lightning war, a symphony of modern, mechanized violence. It is also the next phase of the Great Heist. Following closely behind the combat troops is a different kind of army. The Einsatzgruppen of the SS and Special Economic Commandos known as the Wiedu-Kommando. Their mission is not to fight, but to plunder. They carry ledgers, not rifles. Their targets are not soldiers, but banks, factories, warehouses, and farms. Everything of value is systematically cataloged and seized for the Reich. Trainloads of Polish industrial machinery, coal, timber, and grain begin to roll west into Germany. The conquest is an asset-stripping operation designed to feed raw materials back into the German war machine and provide the resources to pay off the internal MEFO debt. The war, born of economic desperation, must now pay for itself through theft. The pattern is repeated with terrifying efficiency over the next year. Denmark and Norway fall in the spring of 1940, giving Germany control of their iron ore routes and their national treasuries. Then, in May, the Blitzkrieg is unleashed on the West. Holland, Belgium, and Luxembourg are overrun in days. Their gold reserves, if not spirited away in time, are seized. When France capitulates in June, it is subjected to the most extensive, organized looting in modern history. The French are forced to sign an armistice that is not just a military surrender, but a financial one. They are compelled to pay the occupation costs for the German army garrisoning their country. The rate is set at a punitive 400 million francs per day, a figure far exceeding the actual cost. This river of money flows directly into the German war economy, stabilizing the Reichsmark and financing the ongoing conflict. It is the ultimate expression of the Nazi economic model. Other nations will now pay for Germany's war. The French National Gold Reserve, one of the largest in the world, becomes a primary target. A frantic race begins as the French try to evacuate their gold by ship to their colonies in Africa and the Americas, with German agents and U-boats hunting them across the Atlantic. The occupied territories become a captive economic zone. Their industries are forced to produce for Germany. Their people are subjected to rationing, while food and consumer goods are shipped to the Reich. The Ponzi scheme has gone international. Instead of MEFO bills, the currency of debt is now fear and brute force.
The initial rearmament was bought on a promise to the German people. The continuation of the war is paid for by the enslavement of everyone else. From the frozen plains of Russia to the sun-baked coast of North Africa, the Wehrmacht conquers and the economic commandos follow, stripping each nation of its wealth to fuel the war for one more day, one more month, one more year. The 20,000 tanks, the fleets of aircraft, the armies that marched out of a bankrupt nation were not the product of a miracle. They were the product of a colossal fraud, paid for first with the stolen wealth of victims at home, and then with the blood and treasure of an entire continent. The final payment for Hjalmar Schacht's ghost money would not be made in Reichsmarks in the halls of the Reichsbank. It would be made in the rubble of Berlin, in the ruins of Dresden, and in the graveyards of millions across the globe. The debt, born in a quiet banker's office, was ultimately settled in fire and ash.